There are those of us who do not know how to handle a strong emotion. And including many young people. And many think that the only to end the suffering is to go and kill themselves. There's so many young people committing suicide in these days. In South Korea, every day something like 45, 50 of them, young people killing themselves, just because they don't know how to handle a strong emotion. But we as yogini, practitioner, we know how to handle a painful feeling. We know how to handle a painful emotion, a strong emotion. If we are a beginner in the practice, we may not have enough the energy of mindfulness and concentration to embrace our sorrow, our fear. And we have to go to a Sangha and to borrow from the collective energy of the Sangha to do the work. My dear Sangha, here is my pain, my sorrow, my despair. Please help embrace it with me. And your brothers and sisters in the Dhamma will sit down with you and breathe in, breathe out, and help embrace the pain, the sorrow, the fear, the despair in you, provided that you allow yourself to be embraced. Allow yourself to be embraced and transported by the collective energy of the Sangha. You behave as a river and not a drop of water anymore. The drop of water allows herself to be embraced by the whole river and transported by the whole river. And if she knows how to take refuge, to surrender, and then she feels right away, better right away. And that is what we call taking refuge in the Sangha. Taking refuge in the Sangha is not a statement of faith. It is a practice. You have to trust the Sangha, because the Sangha carries the Buddha and the Dhamma within. A true Sangha is a Sangha that has the capacity to generate mindfulness, concentration, and insight, and compassion. And if mindfulness, concentration, insight, compassion are there, the living Buddha is also there. So when you take care, you take refuge in the Sangha, you take refuge at the same time in the Buddha and in the Dhamma. And you surrender. You say that there is no longer any separate self. Here is the block of pain, sorrow. I entrust them to the Sangha. And you sit there among us, you allow the collective energy of the Sangha to embrace you, and you get a relief to profit from the collective practice of the Sangha. You are a Sangha builder. You are a continuation of the Buddha. Because the thing that the Buddha did right after enlightenment is to go and look for friends to set up a Sangha. And at that time there was no bus, there's no train, there's no airplane. He practiced walking meditation and identify members of his Sangha. So the fifth and the sixth exercise are to generate a feeling of joy, of happiness. The seventh and the eighth are to take care of your painful feeling and emotions. And that is what we have to learn and to train ourselves right away. When a strong emotion is coming, you feel it. And you have to abandon everything you are doing and go home to yourself and prepare for its arrival, and you take care of it. And if you know, you feel that you can take care of it, you are not afraid. The way to handle a strong emotion is to put yourself in a stable position and using your in-breath and out-breath in order to make you solid so that the strong emotion cannot blow you away. And you follow the rising and falling of your abdomen. Breathing in, you notice the falling, the rising of your abdomen. Breathing out, you notice the falling of your abdomen. You may like to put your fingers on that to feel the rise and the fall of your abdomen. And concentrate 1% on your in-breath and out-breath with the rising and falling of your abdomen. That's all. And if you do that, if you focus all your attention on your in-breath and out-breath and the rising and falling of your abdomen, you are able to stop the thinking. It's very important to stop the thinking, because the more you think about it, the more you are carried away by the strong emotion. No thinking is the secret. And no thinking can be done by focusing 100% on your in-breath and on your out-breath. Don't be afraid. A strong emotion is impermanent, like everything else. Like a storm. If I know how to handle the situation, the storm will go away after some time. And during the time we practice deep breathing like that, we should remember one thing. And emotion is only an emotion. It comes and stays for some time, and you have to go. And I am much more than one emotion. Why do I have to die just because of one emotion? I have had emotions before. They have come, stay for some time, and go away. I'm not afraid of it. I know how to handle a strong emotion. So in that sitting position or lying position, you invest all your mind and body into the practice of mindful breathing. And if you do, the strong emotion cannot do anything to you. And you do that until the emotion is gone. And you are not afraid that they may come back, but you already know how to handle a strong emotion. Later on, there will be exercises in order to transform deeply. But here it's just to calm it down and survive the painful feeling, survive the strong emotions. What I always remind my friends is that don't wait until the strong emotion comes in order to practice. You will forget the practice. So you have to train ourselves today the practice of belly breathing. If you train yourself for a few days, you see that you are capable of breathing in very deeply. 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 or 12 seconds for in-breath, while the abdomen is rising. And when you breathe out, it may last 10, 12, 15 or more. And you just do it with your whole being. And if you hold it firm, a strong emotion cannot do anything to you. And if we practice a few weeks, and then it becomes a habit. And when a strong emotion comes, you know that you have a way to protect yourself. You remember to practice. And you can teach your child to do. because young people, they may be got into a strong emotion also. There are children who kill other children. There are children who commit suicide. So when your child is in crisis, overwhelmed by a strong feeling, you should help him or her. You say, sit down here with mommy, lying down here, take my hand. Shall we try to breathe in? Shall we try to see the rising of our abdomen? I think it's better than to teach your child when the strong emotion is not there. And have him making the promise that when there is something strong like that, he should come to you, and you and him or her will practice together. You channel to your child the energy of mindfulness and concentration. Breathe in, my dear. Don't you see that your abdomen is rising, is falling? Oh, it's wonderful. We are taking good care of ourselves. And I think school teachers can teach that in school also. Parents have to know the practice, master the practice, and teach children. And school teachers should spend time to help their students to do that. And that is why we hope that this kind of applied ethics can be introduced into schools at every level. And it is completely possible to practice it as something non-confessional, non-religious. The practice of mindfulness, calming the body, calming the feelings and the emotions. And our Dharma teachers have trained groups of school teachers in many countries, and many of them have tried to bring that to the classroom and help improve the quality of the classroom, the study and the teaching. And when you teach a young man, a young woman this practice, you may save his life, her life later on. And then we move to the domain of mind. And we know that there are 51 mental formations. Feeling is just one of them. So here there are 50. And every time one mental formation arises, we should know how to recognize it. If it is fear, we should be able to call it fear. Hello, there, my little fear. I know you are there. You are my old friend. I will take good care of you. Simple recognition. Embracing your fear with mindfulness. So you are like sitting on the river of mental formations, and you are observing the mental formations rising, and going away. And if a mental formation continue to stay with you, and you may like to continue to be with that mental formation and help it, calm it down. And maybe you can go deeper with a practice to help transform it. So recognizing mental formation. And the next one is to cheer up, to gladden your mind. And we have learned that the practice of selective watering, We have many good seeds down there in our store consciousness. And let us give them a good chance to manifest. The seed of joy, the seed of understanding, the seed of forgiveness, the seed of compassion. And with the practice of mindful breathing, we can touch these wonderful seeds and have them manifest in the upper level of our consciousness as a mental formation. That way, we create joy. We give ourselves an opportunity for healing, for nourishment, for nourishing, for transformation. And we can also help the other person to do the same. The practice of selective watering. And the last set of fourth exercise is about the object of mind. You take care of your mind and you take care of the object of your mind. And this is the practice of impermanence. This is the practice of meditation on the concentration on impermanence, the concentration on non-craving, to allow you to see the danger that exists in the object of your craving. And the third one is to contemplate the ultimate dimension of reality. There is a world of birth and death, coming and going, being and non-being. And you usually make use of your discrimination mind in order to deal with it. But there is another world. There is another dimension of reality that lies deeper. That is the ultimate dimension of reality. And living in the historical dimension of reality, you recognize the presence of birth and death, being and non-being, here and there, subject and object, matter and mind, which are different opposing things. But if you have mindfulness concentration, you will touch that historical dimension deeper, and you discover the other dimension, which is free from being and non-being, birth and death. Like in science, the mind of discrimination can be used with classical science, represented by Newton. But when you go to quantum physics, when you go to the extremely small, extremely big, when you want to touch the ultimate, you have to use the mind of non-discrimination. The notion of being and non-being should be removed. The notion of time and space as two separate entities should be removed. The notion of matter and mind as two separate realities should be removed. Otherwise, science will have no future. Because if you continue to use your mind of discrimination, you find it absurd. Things can be here and there at the same time. This can be that at the same time. That makes you confused. And that is why scientists of our time have to learn to make use of their mind of non-discrimination. When the Buddha discussed about right view, he said right view is a kind of insight that is free from both notion of being and non-being. But that is not philosophy, that is a practice. There is a way to help you to get rid of the notion of being, of being. Because as far as the notion of being is there, the notion of non-being is there at the same time. It is a pair of opposites. So the Buddha proposed the teaching of Pratitya Samuppada, the practice, the teaching of interdependence, dependent origination, in order to help you get rid of the notion of being. Get away from the notion of being, non-being, and not fall into the trap of non-being. To remove non-being and yet not to fall into being, into non-being. Because if you fall into non-being, there's annihilation. Non-being means being is there, because they are a pair of opposites. So the teaching of interbeing is a very skillful way, because we still use the word be, to be. But in order to help us getting away from the notion of being, we begin by looking deeply and say that a flower cannot be by herself alone. She has to interbe with all of us, the whole cosmos. So the notion of interbeing is to replace the notion of being and prevent us not to fall into the notion of non-being. Sahabu. Saha means together, Bu means to be there. If being is there, non-being should be there also. If matter is there, spirit is there also. But in order to avoid the double grasping, we have to get away from the notion of matter, and we get away from the notion of mind also, because mind and matter are a pair of opposites. And the ultimate can only be touched when you are able to remove all these notions. Interbeing or co-being. So there is a kind of skillfulness of using the teaching and the practice to help someone to get out of the notion of being, and at the same time not to fall into the opposite notion. Because the ultimate is free from both notions, being and non-being. And also the notion of subject and object. There is a model, there is an image that can help you understand a little bit better the practice of removing the notions of subject and object. If a scientist knows how to get rid of these two notions, he will have a chance. As far as he believes that there is an object of cognition existing apart from his consciousness, his God. Or as far as he believes that there is a consciousness existing independently from the object of cognition, he's still God. So the challenge is that he should remove the duality of subject and object in order for the the reality in itself to reveal itself. Suppose the left side of the sheet of paper represents the subject of cognition. The perceiver who is going to perceive an object. And the other side is the object of cognition. And this is very plain, very clear, that to see is always to see something. You cannot see nothing. You just cannot see nothing. There is no subject possible without object. And that takes place in one jhana, 1 millisecond, less than a millisecond. The nature of consciousness is the nature of cinematography. Very quick. It's a flow of consciousness. Consciousness is not a block. Consciousness is not an object. Consciousness is a flow. And each moment, each instant comprises of subject and object. That is the nature of our mind. Mind and object of mind are always together. Suppose someone is requested to come and take the left side of the paper to go to Bangkok. She cannot do that. Because the subject and object, they are always entangled. They inter-are. Without the left, the right cannot be. Without the subject, the object cannot be. Without the object and subject cannot be. So that is what we have to remember. In Buddhist epistemology, Buddhist psychology, subject and object of mind are mind. They cannot be separated. What you see as a galaxy is the object of your mind. What you see as a mountain is an object of your mind. What you see as a tree, that is the object of your mind. That is what? That's everything you can say. So consciousness is always consciousness of something. Perception is always perception of something. Suppose we draw a circle representing a perception. That takes place is only in 1 millisecond. And we know that subject and object are in there at the same time. The perceiver and the perceived, they manifest at the same time. Without left, there is no right. Without the above, there is no below. Right in that moment of consciousness, subject and objects lean on each other to manifest at the same time. They arise at the same time. They are there at the same time. You cannot say, there is a consciousness in me ready to go out in order to search for an object. That's a double grasping. But in order to help people to understand, we have to suppose that there are two parts. This is the subject and the object. This is the perceiver, and that is the object that is perceived. They lean on each other to be. In Buddhist terminology, we call this kiến phần, the subject. The Sanskrit is Darsana Bhaga. Magga is one part. And the object is called tướng phần. Nimitta Bagga. So what you see as a galaxy, or as the sun, the earth, a tree, is just this part. And if you see it clearly or not, depends on this side. If your mind is overloaded with afflictions and with obstacles like prejudices, what you see there is a distorted image of reality. And when your mind is free of what? Free of prejudices, free of discrimination, free of these notions representing pairs of opposite, is very bright. And the ultimate reveal here, you don't have to go anywhere. And when your subjective mind, when the perceiver is overloaded with worries, fear, anger, discrimination, and overloaded with views, and the ultimate reality cannot be available. And that is why, in order to the ultimate to reveal, you have to remove all obstacles. It's like when you bow to the Buddha. In order to get in touch with the real Buddha, you have to remove the idea that the Buddha is one thing, and you are another thing. You have to see the Buddha having no self, having no separate entity, and you have no separate entity. You have to see the Buddha being made of non-Buddha elements, and you see that you are made of non-you elements, and therefore you can see you in the Buddha and the Buddha in you. Without that kind of insight, bowing to the Buddha will have no effect. It means you have to remove the notion of self and other and non-self. So the first thing you see that we cannot take the left out of the right. The left is in the right and the right is in the left. They co-exist. They inter-are. The left is not the opposite of the right. The left is not an enemy of the right. The left is the right. Inter-being. I am you and you are me. It's interesting to see that in the gospel, Christian gospel, John, there is a sentence like this. There will be one day when you will see that I am in the Father, and you are in me and I am in you. That is the teaching of interbeing. And without that, God is not available. Jesus is not available. And you are not available either. The emptiness of a separate entity. But there is a succession of perceivers and a succession of the perceived. Because each moment lasts just in one very tiny portion of a second. So in order to help, our teacher proposed another part. But let us not be caught by it. The third part, there is a third part. It is called the từ thế phần, gọi là Sva Lakshana. Svabhava. I think Sva Lakshana is better. And that is the foundation of these two. That is the absolute, the ultimate truth, manifesting itself into subject and object. So in the school of Vijnanavada, initiated by Vasubandhu, we have the teaching of the three parts of consciousness. The fundamental part that manifests itself into subject of cognition and object of cognition. And if these ultimate reality or not depends on this. If this is free, and then this reveals itself. And if this is overloaded with afflictions and prejudices, and this is only the world of birth and death, the world of misery, of suffering. And the practice consists in improving to purify your mind. To purify your mind by removing notions, concepts, views, including scientific views. And that is why the last exercise of contemplation is the practice of contemplating letting go. Letting go here means letting go of your knowledge, letting go of your notions, including notions of subject and object. So we can draw something like this, and we call this layer the từ thế phần, the ground, Sva Lakshana. But that risk, there is a risk. We think that this is separate from this and this. But the sheet of paper is very good, because we see that left and right and paper, they interact. You cannot take one out of the two others. And our mode, our way to attain insight is called a pramana. Lượng. And there are two kinds of mode of knowledge. There is a hiện lượng. Which is a direct perception, direct intuition, free from notions, free from reasoning. It's called a pratyaksha. Pratyaksha pramana. And this alone can help you to touch the ultimate. And in the school of Vijnanavada, eyes consciousness, when operating alone, has the capacity to touch the ultimate. In the case, there is no intervention of mind consciousness, because mind consciousness is always discriminating. You have eyes consciousness, nose consciousness, ear consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness. And these consciousness have the power, have the capacity to touch the ultimate when they are not caught by mind consciousness. Mind consciousness is discrimination. With mind consciousness, you locate everything in time and space. You see, this is not that. That is the mind of discrimination. And the other is tỷ lượng. Samanya Pramana. And this mind of discrimination is only good for the historical dimension, only good for classical science. With Pratyaksha Pramana hiện lượng, you have access to Sva Lakshana. And with Samanya Pramana, you have only access to Anumana. This is the word of discrimination. This is outside of that. The right is the opposite of the left. The subject is not the object. So the practice consists in letting go, removing of these obstacles, so that you can touch Sva Lakshana. You have to abandon the word of Anumana Lakshana. It is like in science. If you do not know how to release the notions you have learned from classical science, you cannot enter into the domain of quantum mechanics and so on. And that is why we need a discussion between scientists and yogi. You can profit from yogis and profit from the finding of scientists, and scientists can profit from the discipline of a yogi in order to be able to make a breakthrough again. The training of the mind is very important.